Hi everybody, and welcome back to TRUDGE, a journey to being recovered. My name is Dexter, and I am a recovered addict alcoholic. I want to thank those of you that took some time to subscribe and watch the introduction that I put out last week and give some helpful feedback. My apologies for all the glitches. YouTube can be kind of crazy, but I think I've worked through most of it. This week's submission of TRUDGE is going to get into the beginning parts of the big book called Headlines and Points of Interest. At the end of the introduction that I put out last week, I talked about some of the tools that you'll need in reference to going through the book, and it starts with the 4 highlighters that I spoke about: the pink one, the yellow one, the green one, and the orange one. So before we get into the book, we're going to talk a little bit about this and what these are used for. So in deciphering the big book and breaking it down, folks, we're going to highlight the most important parts of the book and make this quote-unquote point of reference for you to follow in reference to having your spiritual experience. It's almost going to become like, you know, the most important thing you have is this book. It's like the ultimate weapon, so to speak. That's kind of how I feel about it. And by being taught this book by my sponsor and, you know, using these highlighters to break down what was what, it kind of helped me have a better understanding of exactly what it is that we were trying to do. So in reference to the orange one, this is just going to be for important notes. Anytime you see anything in italics, we're going to go ahead and highlight that orange. And if I say orange, you know, we're going to talk about the headlines and points of interest. You're going to hear me say POI a lot. POI just stands for points of interest, so I'll be saying POI orange, POI yellow, POI pink, POI green. That's just going to mean the point of interest that we're discussing in the book is going to be highlighted that color. Okay, follow me so far? So it's going to be POI yellow. And I would write this probably in the front of your 4th edition big book, which is the tool that we're going to use to helping you get towards your spiritual awakening, you know, your psychic change. Yellow is for promises. So orange is going to be for important notes in the book, and yellow is going to be for the promises that we're going to highlight in our book. In order to have a spiritual experience, obviously it takes effort and it takes action. So green is going to be for the actions that are outlined in the book. And then finally, pink is going to be for the prayers that are going to be in the book. These are going to be 4 integral parts of breaking down the big book that we're going to use. So as well as having, you know, the 4th edition big book and, you know, the highlighters, you're probably going to need a notebook later in the line. But right now, to go over headlines and points of interest, my sponsor read it to me over the phone, and I went and wrote it down and then typed it. Obviously, I can't fax it or type it to all of you out there in computer world, but it's probably a good idea to write all this stuff down as we go through, because the hope is, after having a spiritual awakening, that you will probably use this information to teach it to somebody else. So let's get started. This is not an AA-approved piece of material. However, this outline is a personal collective experience of several addicts and alcoholics who have studied this book. If you choose to use this and when it works for you, please share it with another addict or alcoholic when they are ready. The key is when they are ready. Okay, I wasn't ready. It took me a long time to get ready. When I was ready, this worked for me. Okay, so the headline. First of all, this is a guide for the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, 4th edition. The other editions have changed stuff around, moved stuff around. 4th edition is the one I used, and some stuff is on different pages in the earlier editions, understand? This is why we're just going to go with the most current one, okay, that came hot off the presses in, I believe, 1976. So, the first headline, I would be writing this down, guys, this is very important, is, am I an alcoholic or am I a drug addict? You know, how do I know? I come into a 12-step program, I'm not even sure if that's what I am. How do I know? Headline number 1. So let's turn to page 52 of our 4th edition big book. And the first point of interest, this is going to be POI orange. So I have written in the margin POI with a little arrow into this paragraph. And on the second paragraph of page 52, 3 lines down from the beginning of the paragraph, this is going to be all highlighted orange till the end of the paragraph, and it says, we were having trouble with our personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of these bedevilments more important than whether or not we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. So, this is all going to be POI orange, my friends, and this is called the spiritual malady on page 52. So, am I a drug addict? Am I an alcoholic? Am I a food addict? Am I a sex addict? Do I have issues with gambling? The spiritual malady, this is a spiritual sickness, okay? And there's a good chance if a lot of these things that were mentioned in this paragraph are the person you are right now that is struggling, there's a good chance that you are those things. Is it guaranteed? No. I mean, at my big bottom, you know, I could make a living. You know, I was a functional drug addict and a functional alcoholic. But more times than not, if a lot of these things, I'd say 80 to 90, 100% of these things apply to you, there's a good chance that you are an addict of the, you know, hopeless variety, or an alcoholic, you know, struggling. The spiritual malady. Okay, remember this, guys. This is on page 52. Very, very important. So, the next point of interest we're going to have here is we're going to turn to page 34. And remember, we're just jumping around the book right now through the headlines and points of interest to point out the most important parts of the book. We will go through the 12 steps in its entirety. So, on the top of page 34, this is going to also be POI orange. POI is going to be written in the margin with an arrow going into this sentence. And it's the second line down from the top. And it says, as we look back, we feel we had gone on drinking or drugging. You can just substitute whatever it is there. Many years beyond the point where we could quit on our own willpower. Now, I know for me, I drank way longer than, you know, the point where I could have stopped on my own, you know, a good 10 years. You know, if that be the case for you, there's a good chance that you are an alcoholic, or there's a good chance that you are a drug addict. You know, I used to smoke, drink, and I know that I did it well beyond the scope of being able to stop on my own. And when I did try to stop, I couldn't stop. You know, this is what we're talking about in reference to, are you this person? You know, you come into the 12-step rooms, you're just not sure if you belong there. These are things that you should be kind of looking at for yourself. The spiritual malady, does that relate? You know, when I look back at my drinking or my drug addiction, did I go on much longer than the days that I could have stopped on my own? Follow me so far? Okay, so POI orange, top of page 34. So, the next POI, the next point of, you know, interest that we're going to look at is going to be on page 31. Just a couple pages prior to where we were just at. So on the bottom, the last paragraph on page 31, this is going to be POI green. Green is for actions. And it's going to say, in reference to, am I an alcoholic or am I a drug addict? Okay? We do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic or drug addicted. That's, you know, that's not our job to tell that to you. But you can quickly diagnose yourself. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. So the word controlled is going to be underlined. It doesn't say go out and, you know, go on a roaring, you know, leaving Las Vegas bender. Just go try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. On the next page, continuing on POI green, it says try it more than once. It will not take long for you to decide if you are honest with yourself. The word honest is going to be circled. There are going to be a couple words throughout this book that I'm going to, let's call them buzzwords. You know, when you see these words, we're going to have you circle these words. These are paramount importance. They're there meticulously placed for a reason. If you're honest with yourself, it will not take you long to decide. It goes on to say, continuing on, points of interest green, it may be worth a case of jitters to get a full knowledge of your condition. So, you know, what the book is trying to express to you there is that we want you to find out. You know, if you're a hard drinker or a weekend warrior that could take it or leave it, you know, you may not need the spiritual solution. You know, there are other things, hydrotherapy, belladonna treatments, you know, Dr. Phil, Oprah, Dr. Oz, that may be able to solve your problem, you know, Borders, self-help section, you know, but we want to find out if you're the real drug addict or the real alcoholic, you know, and, you know, that comes down to two things, control and choice. If you can control the substance when it's in you and make the choice to take it or leave it, you know, you may or may not be an alcoholic, and we want you to find out. You see, the person coming into the rooms is not my job, according to the literature and how it states, to say whether you're a drug addict or an alcoholic. That's for you to find out on your own. This is POI Orange from 31 to 32, and this is also how to take the first step. Now, obviously, we haven't started any steps yet, but when we get to this point, we will understand already. This is how you take your first step. We want you to find out. Diagnose yourself. It's not my job to tell anyone that they're an alcoholic or a drug addict, because how am I supposed to know? I'm not living in their shoes. Hopefully everybody followed me through the first set of headlines. Let's move on to headline number 2. So, what is in the big book? I didn't know what was in the big book. I thought that the big book was a guide to learning how to not drink. And I was wrong, Not drinking and not drugging was a byproduct, I later found out, of having a spiritual experience. So let's get right into it. Points of interest. The first one's gonna be in the Roman numeral XIII. I hate the Roman numerals; they're kind of hard to follow. But a key to it will say forward to the first edition, and the forwards are located in the very front of the book. So on page XIII, it says forward to the first edition. This is the forward as it appeared in the very first printing of this book in the edition in 1939. This is the inception of getting this information down on paper. And the point of interest is going to be the very first 2 sentences. Okay, they're going to be POI Orange, and they state, what is in the big book? Well, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered. The word recovered is circled. This is vital. This is very important. We're not recovering. We have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Mind and body, those 2 words are going to be circled as well, because later on when we get into the doctor's opinion, one of the very first chapters, it talks about this being a 2-part disease. The obsession of the mind, coupled with the phenomenon of craving that takes place in the body. Continuing on, POI Orange, it says, to show other alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever, okay, precisely how we have recovered. Now, precisely how we have recovered is in italics. That's super important anytime something's in italics, so I also have that underlined. Precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. The main purpose. The words main purpose are circled. So, it's telling you what's in the big book. The big book is it's a channel, it's a guide to being recovered, and then when we do that, our job is to show other drug addicts and alcoholics precisely how we have done that. Okay, so that's just the beginning of what's in this book. POI Orange, page XIII. The next point of interest, what is in the big book for the headline, is going to be on page 20. So, the first paragraph, it's 4 lines down from the top of page 20, everyone. It says, you may have already asked yourself why it is that all of us, and I have the words all of us circled, became so very ill from drinking. I never really met anyone that didn't really become very ill from drinking if they were of the hopeless variety alcoholic that I was, or drug addict that I was. But again, this is not comparing, but the book is very clear. All of us. Doubtless you are curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary, we have recovered, again the word recovered is circled, from a hopeless condition of mind and body. I have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body, also underlined. This is still POI Orange. Mind and body are circled. Again, I just expressed why that is. Continuing on, Orange, if you are an alcoholic or a drug addict that wants to get over it, you may already be asking, what do I have to do? To find that out, you go into the big book, preferably with someone who has had a spiritual experience and has worked 12 steps. I hear a lot, just go get a sponsor, and I've done that, but it really helped when I had somebody that had come before me, that had worked this program, that could actually articulate and show me exactly how to go into this book and use what was in this book in my life. Points of interest. What is in the big book is the headline. The next page, page 45. Now, in my estimation, guys, this is the most important point of interest in the entire book. We are going to highlight it orange. It is on page 45. It is the second paragraph, and we are going to call this POI VIP. Just like, the spiritual malady is going to be on page 52, Point of interest, VIP is going to be on page 45. I think this is the most important thing in the entire big book. It is highlighted orange. It says, lack of power, that was our dilemma. The word was is circled. Prior to doing this, that was my problem. We had to find a power by which we could live. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves. A power greater than ourselves is in italics, and it's also going to be underlined as well as highlighted orange. Obviously, but where and how will we define this power? It goes on to say, well, that's exactly what this book is about. The word exactly is the key word there. That's the buzzword there. If you ask me directions to my house and I tell you exactly where it is, there's only one way to get. That's exactly where it's at. That's where I'm at. The book is very clear. This is exactly what the book is about. Its main object, the words main object are circled, and the rest of the sentence, as well as being highlighted orange, is going to be underlined. Its main object of the big book is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. The word problem is circled, all P-O-Y orange. The last part is underlined. So, it doesn't say solve my drug problem or my drinking problem. It says my problem, okay? Which is a lot different than how I came up and learned, my program of recovery. The one thing that was always missing for me was a power greater than myself. I thought that as long as I didn't drink and didn't use, that it would all get better. And it did for a time, but I had no skills to deal with the other problems that came up in my life. Divorce, taxes, sickness, things like that. Okay, makes sense, everyone? Okay, let's move on to there is a solution. Point of interest is on page 17. The headline is There's a Solution, and we'll turn to page 17. At the bottom of page 17, this is going to be P-O-Y yellow for promises. There's a solution. It says, the tremendous fact, and the word fact is circled, for every one of us, and the words every one of us are underlined. It's talking about all of us. Is that we have discovered a common solution. Look, we all have a common problem, whether it's drinking, drugging, whatever the problem is, overeating, gambling, common problem. But we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree. The word absolutely is circled. Absolutely is circled. And upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries for those who suffer from alcoholism. And again, the single-minded focus of the people that wrote this book was not drinking alcohol and through having a spiritual experience, but you could just substitute the words in or out. They absolutely are applicable, okay? It could say addiction, it could say gambling, whatever it is. These are the first step promises of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We have a common problem, but we have found a common solution. And this is promised to those people that work these steps in their entirety. The next headline, we're going to go with the words, can the steps solve my drinking/drug problem? Okay, now again, while the single-minded focus is for alcoholism for the men and women who wrote this book, there are drug addicts that, a lot of times aren't, sure if this could work for them. And we're going to point out parts in the book that show you that it can, and parts in the book that speak to, our forefathers and the men and women that also had issues with alcoholism. They also used drugs. There's quite a bit of cross-addiction in the big book, and we're going to point some of that out to you now. So the first point of interest, folks, is going to be on page 84. And the bottom of page 84, the very last paragraph, this is my favorite part of the book, and I love it for a lot of different reasons. It's going to be highlighted yellow, P-O-Y yellow. And it says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. So if you're a fighter of cocaine, or you're a fighter, struggling with marijuana or whatever it is, it tells you right off the bat. By the time you get to this part in the book, these are the 10-step promises, or if not before, these will be things that are happening to you. You will not be fighting that or anyone. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor, or whatever your flavor of choice is. If tempted, we will recoil from it as from a hot flame. Now, that's a powerful statement. I mean, we've all kind of almost touched a stove and got burned, you know. To say that that will happen, you know, is pretty a bold statement. But, you know, I'm here to tell you that it's been true in my life. You know, I don't even really think about drugs or alcohol anymore. And if the thought does occur, it's almost kind of like that. You know, I don't want to get burned. I'm going to stay away from that because that's what God's will for me is. And that's what the program is predicated on, is your higher power helping you solve your problem. We react sanely and normally, continuing on POI yellow. And we find that this has happened automatically. So it's telling you that spiritual experience that takes place, it'll just start to become who you are. We see that our new attitude toward liquor, or whatever the substance is, has been giving us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the spiritual awakening. That's that psychic change taking place. That's the miracle of it. I have the word miracle circled. There's a lot of people in this world that believe miracles are like, you know, babies being born that weren't supposed to be born, or men and women taking up their wheelchairs and walking again. And those are amazing miracles. But some of the lesser miracles in this world are people like you and I just not ever drinking and drugging ever again when we were deemed hopeless by our loved ones or by society, or that person will never get it. That's a miracle. We're going to go ahead and circle that. That's the miracle of it. This is important. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. So I'm not waking up feeling like I have to slay the dragon again. You know, God, another day. You know, just for today, or I'm no matter what, I'm not going to drink today, no matter what happens. And that worked for me for a while, but the day came where that stopped working, and I had no tools to fall back on, and I almost picked up. Okay? It also says, neither are we avoiding temptation. Now, you know, once I began to have my spiritual experience, it was amazing to me the places that I never went before, you know, because I felt like I couldn't go there, because if I went there, I would act out and I would drink and I would smoke and I would drug. You know, it tells us we're not even avoiding temptation. Why? Because the problem gets to be removed now. So, you know, it was amazing to me as I had this spiritual awakening. You know, I happened to be in a position where I was at Mardi Gras. You know, I get to travel quite a bit, and I was in Cartagena, Colombia, with a pocket full of money, you know, all types of stuff going down there in reference to how I used to think and act and, you know, drink and drug, and that wasn't even an issue for me. Why? Because the problem got to be removed. I don't have to avoid going to my friend's wedding because there's going to be alcohol there, or not do this or not do that. We avoid temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. The words safe and protected are circled. This is important. We have not even sworn off. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I continue to swear off, and so I'll never do it again, or honey, I'm so sorry, I'll never do that again. I mean, it became an everyday thing. The 10-step promises here is telling us we don't swear off anything. Instead, the problem has been removed. I have that underlined. And this is what I think we're not hearing a lot in our 12-step meetings, is that the problem gets to go away. It gets to be removed. You know, the chemo gets the cancer, and it gets to be removed. And as long as I continue to uplift my spiritual condition for being recovered with work and self-sacrifice for others, it stays removed. You know, I don't have to fight this demon every day. It gets to go away. I wish somebody would have told me that, you know, that I didn't have to wake up and slay the dragon again today. The problem can be removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. But be confident. Don't be arrogant, but be confident. Be convinced. Know it. Feel it in your heart that I can do that. Why should I not be going to this party because there's alcohol there? I've had a spiritual experience. There's nowhere I can't go. I'm in the process of building an arch through which I get to, you know, walk through a free man. And this is a new freedom that we're learning by doing this work, friends. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. In fit spiritual condition is underlined. So that whole thing is a 10-step promises, POI yellow throughout, and those important things that we circled are underlined are of paramount importance to having a spiritual, or what will happen when you have a spiritual experience. It's promised to you. And how to stay in your fit spiritual condition is it's for work and self-sacrifice for other people. It's not a self-help program, it's a help others program. Altruism, you know, it's predicated on that. Okay, so based on that, can the steps solve my drinking/drug problem? It sounds to me like it not only could solve them, but it give you so much more. The next point of interest, page 6. At the bottom of page 6, the last 4 letters, this is going to be POY orange, and it says, a doctor came, and this is in Bill's story, a doctor came with a heavy sedative. Sedative is just another way of saying drugs. The next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. It's all POY orange. And this talks about the story of Bill W., the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, and how he also used drugs as well as drank alcohol. And so he recovered from this illness, and he was using alcohol just as much as he was using drugs down the stretch. And a lot of people need to know that. There's people that believe that the single-minded focus of alcohol is all we should talk about in our meetings, and I can respect that. I believe in respecting the traditions of the meeting that you're in. But at the same time, there are drug addicts that need to know that they can recover from this using this absolute formula. It worked for our predecessors and our forefathers, and it can work for you. It's worked for me. It's worked for everyone I've worked with, and a lot of these people also struggle with drugs as well. So the next point of interest is going to be on page 22. One, two, three, four, five, 6 lines down from the top of page 22, it says, as matters grow worse. So this is going to be POY orange as well. And it says, as matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative, there's that word again, more drugs, and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can go to work. I can absolutely relate. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine. Ladies and gentlemen, what is morphine? It's a drug, or some sedative with which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums, which today in 2014 would be drugs and rehabs. Another perfect example of a story of a man in the book that used drugs. This is the best example of cross-addiction in the entire big book. Again, showing you that there are drugs in this book. This book, yes, the single-minded focus was, on not drinking alcohol for many of us when we get here, but we get in the book and we find out it's about establishing a relationship with your higher power, which will solve all your problems. And there's other problems it talks about in this book. It talks about sex. It talks about drugs. It talks about relationships. It talks about family. It talks about employers. It talks about wives. It gets very much in depth. So don't get too hell-bent on just the single-minded focus of being alcohol. While that byproduct is a major thing that happens when we have a spiritual experience, broaden your scope, broaden your base. The more you broaden your base, the higher point of freedom that you're going to have, and you're going to see it happen in all your affairs, which is what the 12-step culminates in, and that's what we're made to practice after having this spiritual experience. So, the next point of interest, let's go to page 176. And this, I believe, is going to speak towards more cross-addiction. At the top of page 176, everyone, it's going to speak to more drugs, and this is going to be POY, and it's going to be orange. It says, most of the time, therefore, I did not take the morning drink which I crave so badly. This is Dr. Bob's nightmare, the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, the man that Bill went, sought out, found, and helped him have his spiritual experience. And together, the first 100 or so alcoholics were formed. But instead would fill up on large doses of sedatives to quiet the jitters, which distressed me, terribly. So, all POY orange, just throughout the book, it does talk about drugs. And again, try not to get so caught up in the single-minded focus being the substance of alcohol. A lot of drug addicts and people who suffer with other issues or other sicknesses see that word and figure, well, that's not for me. And that couldn't be any further from the truth. This program that is outlined so masterfully in this book is like the Swiss Army knife, and can help you with whatever you're struggling with given, you suffer with the control and the choice issues around it. I have lived it, and I've seen this happen to other people as well. It is guaranteed. It says that we have never seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, and I fully believe that. So, we're coming up on 30 minutes, and I try to really not have these last more than that. I want to be able to hold your attention and have you understand for sure what the book is trying to convey to you. I know I'm spitting out POI, this color, that color, we're switching to this page, that page, you're trying to write this down, circle this, highlight it. It's quite a bit. So we're going to stop right there. There's going to be something else I want to go over before I end. But I do want to express to you, the viewer who is working this program with me and wanting to have a spiritual awakening so all your problems can be solved, how important it is to go over this work, you know, between submissions of trudge. It's not as much what we do here together when you're watching me and you're writing this stuff down, as much as you are going back into the book and making sure you understand it, and then later putting it into practical application. If I teach you how to drive stick, and then when I'm not with you, you're not practicing how to drive stick and incorporating that, you're never going to be able to do it. You know, it's not just something that you can read, you know, and then never do it again. You have to be able to be willing to put the effort in. So I strongly suggest that for everyone who is wanting to do this work and have a spiritual awakening. Let's turn to page 63 before we end. And again, Trudge will be out on Mondays. I will be uploading these videos every Monday, so everybody will have a chance to look and we can stay current. So everyone knows the Serenity Prayer. You know, most of us know it inside, outside, a couple different languages. You can say it backwards, forwards. You know, and the Serenity Prayer is an absolutely great prayer. I was taught the third step prayer being basically the Swiss Army knife of all the prayers, and the prayer that I said prior to doing all this work every time I met with my sponsor was that prayer. And I'm going to point that out to you guys on page 63. And it's the second paragraph where it says we were now at step 3. And this is all going to be highlighted pink. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood Him, and that's very important, as we understood Him is underlined, God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. And this is what we're trying to move towards, that spiritual awakening that has to do with a power greater than yourself, about helping others and bearing witness, which is what I'm doing to you right now, and showing you that I've had victory over these problems. So one day you may be able to have victory as well and bear witness to someone else and continually to help someone else. This is the prayer that is most important to me in my life, and this is how we are going to start every submission of Trudge from here on out. POI pink, or excuse me, it's just going to be highlighted pink, and this is vital. And the sooner you can understand what it's about and memorize it, we will, you know, we will be using this. And I say it as much as I possibly can, and not only just say it, but I live it. And I'm grateful to have learned this promise. And mind you, we're not anywhere near the third step, but getting a basic understanding of it now and memorizing it now will absolutely be huge as we start to get into the book. So that is all for today, everyone. My name is Dexter. I am a recovered addict, alcoholic, and it's, you know, I'm very grateful to have this gift in my life, and I know I only get to keep it by helping others attain it as well. Giving it away is absolutely huge. And in the altruistic movement that our forefathers, you know, expressed and did and has been taught to me, I have to continue to do it to enlarge my spiritual condition, and work and self-sacrifice for others is the way. So I'm going to go ahead and upload this, and we'll get back to headlines and points of interest next Monday, and we'll probably finish that in about 2 weeks, and then we'll start into the book. Until such time, wherever you're at, you know, look for, if you do not have a sponsor, you know, I suggest you strongly get one who has been in the book and had a spiritual experience that can continue to reaffirm the things that I'm saying here. And, you know, until you find one, this will absolutely, you know, this will absolutely do. You know, again, you know, electronic sponsorship helped me. My sponsor is on the other side of the country, and via a phone I had a spiritual experience. So I know this can absolutely work. Until next week, everyone, be well. Thank you for allowing me to serve. And, you know, please don't forget to pay it forward, pay attention, and rely on God and not on others. Until next week, namaste.